It has been over 2 years since Russia first invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Most recently, on July 8, a Russian missile attack on Kyiv's main children's hospital killed 41 people. An allegation that the UN Human Rights Monitoring Commission insists is most likely true, but one that Russia has vehemently denied. Toretsk, an eastern Ukrainian town, has also come under attack. While Russia was not invited to the Summit on Peace in Ukraine in Switzerland held in mid-June this year, Ukrainian President Zelensky has now called for peace talks and negotiations with President Putin.
Many around this table have said that Russia should have been here today, and I fully agree. You should have been here.
Russia, while also preaching and supporting peace and an end to the conflict, is at the same time engaging in more attacks. However, strategic advances in the war appear unlikely. Amidst the hullabaloo over peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, the Istanbul Agreements of 2022 are in the news. The Times also published copies of draft agreements from March 29 and April 15, 2022. Let us take a look at what this agreement was, how it came about, and why is it relevant. Ukraine and Russia started peace talks towards the end of February 2022 in Belarus. This was followed by a second round of talks and negotiations at Istanbul, Turkey. From unrealistic Russian demands, especially those surrounding the denazification and political subjugation of Kyiv, over the course of the month between March 10th and March 29th, the two countries arrived at agreement on several core terms for peace. An important element of the process included Ukraine's non-membership of NATO. Still, there were smaller issues. While Russia insisted on Ukraine's neutrality, an internationally regulated legal status that prevents the country from any military cooperation with or discrimination of any country at war. By March end, Ukraine had convinced Russia to agree to a non-aligned status, which is legally less binding. The only military-related question which remained a bone of contention has to do with the size of the regular Ukrainian army. While Ukraine pushed for 250,000 soldiers, Russia was adamant at 85,000. Similarly, Ukrainians wanted 800 tanks. The Russians would allow only 342. Ukraine wanted to keep the range of missiles at 280 kilometers or about 174 miles, while Russia insisted on 40 kilometers or about 25 miles. The agreement finally decided to move conversations about this at the presidential level. The special status of Donetsk and Luhansk regions was also discussed, and Putin agreed to return the areas to Ukraine if they had an autonomous status. The meaning of autonomous, however, was contentious. President Putin's recent comment on June 15, 2024, that Russia would agree to a ceasefire only if Ukraine handed over 4 regions the Kremlin has declared part of Russia, apart from dropping its NATO aspirations, clears up the matter at present. However, this was not all. Since Russia and Ukraine could not arrive at any mutual understanding over Crimea, the agreement decided to exclude discussions over the region for the next 10 to 15 years. While both sides considered the Istanbul Agreement to be a good deal, it ultimately failed and was rejected by end of April due to a number of reasons. While evidence of Russia's brutality in Bucha, where bodies of massacred civilians were found, after Russia withdrew from the territory, is considered an important reason, President Zelensky had announced that talks would go on uninterrupted. David Arakhamia, the head of the Russian delegation at the negotiations, declared that the agreement failed because Ukraine could not trust Russia generally, and it would also be difficult to amend the constitution, thus removing the intention to join NATO. But most importantly, on April 7, 2022, the then UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrived in Kyiv and promised weapons to fight Russia until the end of the war. This had to do with a final important element in the Istanbul Agreement, which provided Ukraine a guarantee of security in case of attack from an aggressor. The Ukrainian communique listed the permanent UN members, including Russia, as well as Canada, Germany, Israel, Italy, Poland, and Turkey, as guarantor states, who were individually obliged to act and would not have to reach consensus before doing so. But Russia inserted a clause saying that all guarantor states, including Russia, had to approve the response if Ukraine were attacked. In effect, Moscow could invade Ukraine again and then veto any military intervention on Ukraine's behalf, an absurd condition that Kyiv quickly identified as a deal breaker. Moreover, reports suggest that Ukraine did not consult Washington until after it issued the communique, one that it never published. It is not difficult to deduce that Western powers were not very keen in making the commitment to defend Ukraine in case it was invaded, and thus open up possibility for direct conflict with Russia. So, instead of embracing the Istanbul communique and subsequent diplomatic process, the West ramped up military aid to Kyiv and increased the pressure on Russia. At present, the agreement is definitely prone to influence by larger changes in global backdrops, like the US elections in November, the changed battlefield realities, and Russia's advances. For instance, Russia now considers the Bruntland extended by a demilitarized zone as a part of its security claims. Moreover, Moscow intends to bring China into a new European security system to regulate the resolution of the war in Ukraine. Nevertheless, the salience of the agreement text lies in the framework that it provides for all future talks and negotiations between the two countries. Since issues regarding the status of occupied Ukrainian territories and Ukraine's future security guarantees remain relevant, the agreement is crucial in the movement towards lasting peace in the region. Bureau Report, India Today Global.